championship changes, teamwork, and a slight snooze fest. This week I'm chatting all about the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, so get ready because you've been summoned to the steward's office. Hello everyone and welcome back to the steward's office. I'm Syra, and this week F1 headed out to Saudi Arabia at the Jeddah Corniche circuit for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. The last race in what has felt like a slightly long triple header. We're 5 races into the season now. Everything is really gaining momentum. It feels like we've got a much better read on all the teams and where the cars are, which cars are doing really well, and which cars and teams need a lot of work over the next couple of months. And if you follow me on TikTok at stewards_office, you will know that this is not one of my favourite tracks, partly because we don't get a lot of overtaking, and being a street circuit, I'm not really expecting a whole load of them. But I also think part of that reason is after 2022 and that awful crash that Mick Schumacher had, and it was just really unpleasant to see. So it kind of came towards the bottom of my list. It is a track that we tend to have safety cars at. It has a 100% record of safety cars when we go and race out there. So not one of my favourites, but still an interesting track because it is a really quick circuit. It's the fastest track, well, the fastest street circuit that we have on the calendar. It's the second fastest track overall on the calendar. Monza's the only track that beats it. But let's head into the actual weekend though, and there wasn't a whole load of news going into this week, I don't think, from what I can remember and what I looked at. Actually a fairly quiet week. What we heard a lot of were mumblings of Max Verstappen and his camp being potentially unhappy with Red Bull, maybe him wanting to move to another team. I don't put a lot of stock in those rumours in terms of moving to another team. I don't think he would do that. There was a rumour floating around that said something along the lines that Aston Martin had offered or willing to offer Max Verstappen £300 million just to move from Red Bull to them. And I can't lie, I don't believe that one at all. But yeah, that was really it. I don't think we had a lot more news. So let's just head into all the on-track action that we got. And qualifying was an interesting one. And I'm gonna start by saying, right from the off, I am so surprised that both Ferraris managed to get into Q3. They had struggled throughout all of our practice sessions, and even during qualifying, that car didn't seem to be switched on. It seemed difficult for both of the drivers, but more so Lewis Hamilton. And honestly, I did get to a point after FP3 where I was like, as long as the drivers get into Q3, we'll take it. That's a good result because it wasn't working for the team, and I was a little bit disappointed. They brought upgrades to the last race out in Bahrain, and Charles said, look, the upgrades are working and we're happy with them, but they aren't really suited to Bahrain. They will be more suited when we go out to Jeddah. And it didn't fully seem to materialise, at least in qualifying. The qualifying pace for both of the cars was not great. We did end up with Charles Leclerc in P4 and Lewis Hamilton in P7. So for Charles, really not an awful result, but there's still work to be done on that Ferrari in terms of their qualifying trim. Now, we did have Lance Stroll knocked out in Q1, and the reason I point this out, because he has been knocked out in Q1 quite a few times. It's not a massive surprise, not in a harsh way, but, you know, he has not been doing great. But this weekend with that Q1 exit, he is now the driver with the most Q1 exits in his career, overtaking Kevin Magnussen. Not a record or a stat that anyone wants attached to them, let's be honest. But I read on an Instagram post that he was quoted saying, well, you know what, if you put both of the McLaren drivers in a Sauber for 10 years, they'd also have the most Q1 exits. And my point here is that he has not been in a Sauber for 10 years. He's never driven the Sauber, and I don't think his career spanned 10 years just yet. I might be wrong there, but regardless, the point kind of felt moot, especially when Fernando Alonso has managed to get into Q3 when Lance Stroll has exited in Q1, and this weekend, yes, Fernando Alonso didn't make it into Q3, but he did get out a Q1, so kind of a moot point for me from Lance, but yes, he now holds the record for the most Q1 exits. Q3 for Lando Norris was a bit of a nightmare because he ended up crashing, and thankfully he was okay. And I can't lie, I gasped when I saw that it was a McLaren car and that it was Lando Norris. And I knew the moment they said it was Lando's car, he was going to be very hard on himself, which he was. And I don't think it ended up helping because he didn't have a good qualifying out in Bahrain, and then compounded by the fact that he was going to start in P10 out in Saudi because he crashed his car. It is gutting, and I know there are a lot of critics of Lando Norris and people who just don't think he's got what it takes to be a driver's champion. I don't think that's the case. I will flat out say that yes, he made a mistake and it did cost him a really good grid starting position, but I don't think there's a reason to pile on hate to Lando Norris. Or, on the flip side, say that he did nothing wrong and it was something to do with the car. He made a mistake, he owned up to it, and kind of had to live with that. So, gutting for Lando Norris, 2 not great qualifyings in a row and starting P10. Slight surprise though, because it was Max Verstappen that ended up in pole position for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and I wasn't expecting it. The car did look a lot better than it did during practice sessions. It seemed to really come alive, but I just didn't think that he would be able to get as close as he did to the McLarens and then manage to bypass them by a very small margin, but still extracted an incredible amount of speed from that car. Behind him was going to be Oscar Piastri, who was doing so well. I did think he was going to get pole position, but P2 was still very good. And then it was George Russell once again managing to put that Mercedes car in a really good starting position, and it's what he's done over the past 5 races, to be fair. Like I mentioned, Charles Leclerc was in P4, and then Lewis Hamilton having a difficult qualifying, struggling to get those tyres in the right window, and starting in P7 behind Carlos Sainz in the Williams. But let's head into some of our race highlights, starting with the title fight, because there are really right now 3 people in contention, and that is obviously Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. And let's start off with who is leading the championship coming into this weekend, Lando Norris, who started in P10. Now I think he made a super good effort to make up places during this race. But that P10 start meant that he was battling with dirty air and having to get a lot of overtakes in, working his tyres a bit more than people who were at the front, Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri, who had cleaner air and didn't have to deal with as many overtakes. And what I will say when we saw some of Lando's overtakes was that he seemed to be a little impatient with them. The ones that really stick out to me and where I think the impatience was really felt were the overtakes that he did with Lewis Hamilton. So twice he tried to overtake Lewis Hamilton. He did it, but then because of the place where Lando ended up overtaking him, it meant that Lewis got DRS and managed to overtake him again. And there was one where it just felt Lando went in, and I was worried he was going to crash into Lewis. Little bit impatient, I think, with some of the overtakes, a little bit scrappy, but didn't cause an accident and got the job done. But yeah, for me, it just felt like he really wanted to get those overtakes in. He knew he was, running out of laps. Not running out, but he was wasting laps behind cars that were way slower than him, and potentially it was just getting to him that he was still behind some of these cars. Never really got to fight with the front 2 though, never really got to fight with Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri. The fight for him was really against George Russell, Charles Leclerc, trying to claim that P3, P4, P5 space. That was really where his battle was. Didn't end up making P3, didn't get the podium, but still did a really decent effort to get to where he did. He finished in P4, tried to catch up with Charles Leclerc, who finished in P3, but just couldn't manage it. But we had that battle right at the front with Oscar Piastri and Max Verstappen, and Max did start from pole position, but put himself on the back foot a little bit. Lap 1, he ended up getting a penalty, and it was a 5-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage against Oscar Piastri. Now that penalty didn't affect him too much, I don't think. It wasn't a massive hindrance to him. The pace in the car was there to try and make up those 5 seconds. But what it did do is start the debate of, 1, did he deserve that penalty? Was he really leaving the track and gaining an advantage there? Or was it just a lap 1 incident? But 2, what I was really seeing more of across social media was the question of, should we be handing out penalties for leaving the track and gaining an advantage? Or should the stewards just turn around and say, look, you have to give that place back? And the rule kind of changed. I want to say a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, right? Where basically the drivers and the teams could use their own initiative to give the place back. And if they didn't, the stewards would then put the penalty in place. They wouldn't be telling the drivers, you have to give that place back. The driver and the team would kind of have to use their own initiative and own knowledge and go on what they thought had actually happened. Obviously, I don't think Red Bull really thought they had done anything wrong, but when the stewards analysed that incident, they believed that Max was leaving the track and gaining an advantage. They said that Oscar Piastri's front axle was ahead of Max Verstappen's, which meant that he had earned that place. And yeah, that 5-second time penalty was given. And I think some people who, not even specifically with Max, but just in general, when that penalty gets given, we're just saying that sometimes it feels like that 5 seconds is much easier to deal with than giving the place back. And so they should just be forced to give that place back or have a harsher penalty than 5 seconds. But that was that. It didn't hinder Max too much. Do I think it cost him a race win because he did come in P2? I don't think so. I don't think it cost him the race win. I do think the McLaren of Oscar Piastri was just too quick, to put it bluntly. I don't think it necessarily cost him. There might have been more of a chance of him winning without that 5-second penalty, but I do think Oscar was going to win that race, and that was my prediction before the race even started. And with Oscar Piastri's win, his third this season, our only multiple race winner this season, he is now leading the World Drivers' Championship in his third season in Formula One. He overtook his teammate and is now leading the WDC, which is so exciting. I'm hoping that we see that P1 in the championship change hands a couple of times throughout the season, and I really think it will, especially between those three that I mentioned, Lando, Max, and Oscar. I think it will swap hands a lot, but it's really exciting to see. And yeah, Oscar drove just a really cool, calm, and collected race, did super, super well, and got the win in, has now managed to take the lead in the drivers, which is incredible. I think commentary was saying it's the first Australian driver since 2010. It's really hard to place who might win the championship this year. It could be Oscar, it could be Lando, it could be Max. I would love to see Oscar win it though. I don't know why. I just love how laid back he is about everything, and whether it's a win, a pole position, a DNF, whether someone's blocking him, he's so calm about it all. But I think it would just be great to see him win the championship. But we will wait and see what happens. My money's on one of the McLaren boys doing it. I think Max will be there and thereabouts. I think he will be fighting hard for his 5th championship, but I just have my money on one of the McLaren boys doing it this year. Honourable mention to Ferrari, though. I did mention that Charles Leclerc had gotten P3, and it's Ferrari's first Grand Prix podium this season. They obviously had the win in the sprint in China from Lewis, but this was their first actual podium in a Sunday race. So congratulations to them. The car did seem a little bit more lively on race day. It did seem to be doing better, and Charles had really good pace throughout the race. Lewis, on the second half of his stint with the hard tyre, seemed to have more pace. So it is looking like it might be working a little bit more for the team, and the car is working out a little bit better, but that quali pace is hindering them, and it's sticking them into and having to try and get overtakes in and making their lives harder, essentially. But they are catching up with Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship, which I'm not surprised at. I think obviously that double disqualification did not help earlier in the season, but I do think they will be overtaking Red Bull in a couple of races' time. Moving on to some of our midfield battles, though, and Williams had an incredible race. Now, they ended up getting double points, down to a lot of teamwork from both of their drivers, and it came about because Carlos Sainz was willing to let Alex Albon stay in his DRS so Isaac Hadjar wouldn't be able to overtake them, because Isaac was on much fresher tyres, softer tyres, and there was a threat that they were going to come away with less points because of Isaac, but they played such a good, smart game to make sure they got home with the maximum points that they were able to. So, incredible weekend for Williams, bouncing back from the Bahrain Grand Prix really well. Isaac Hadjar, though, still drove a really, really good race. I love watching Isaac Hadjar race. He is a rookie I just don't think I was expecting him to do as well as he's been doing, and he's really snuck up, I think, on a lot of people. But he's just been doing so well, and I think part of what I love is that you can see how much he's enjoying this entire experience, and I think with a lot of things in life, it's so easy to get caught up, especially when you reach something that you want, something big. But I think Isaac, he's taking it seriously and he's driving so well, but he's also taking it all in and actually enjoying it. And I think that's what's also making him drive so well. His teammate, though, did not have the best race because, you know what, in terms of driving, it wasn't bad, actually. He wasn't too far behind Isaac Hadjar, but then he got given a 10-second time penalty. And I believe that was for leaving the track and gaining an advantage against Jack Dewar. Now, it was either leaving the track and gaining an advantage or forcing another driver off track. But Liam Lawson has continued his run of getting penalties in races because it's not been great for him in terms of time penalties. Hopefully, after this triple header, it gives him the chance to sort of reset and recenter after what has been a hectic 5 races for him, trying to adjust to the Red Bull car, getting booted out of the Red Bull seat, trying to adjust to the V-Carb car. It is a lot for your mind and body to take, let's be honest. So I'm hoping maybe he gets a chance to really reset now over the week break we have before Miami, and maybe get to grips with the car a bit more time in the simulator and things like that. But yeah, not great for him. Little bit of drama we had though on lap 1 of the race. Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly ended up making contact with each other. Guys, it was not an instant I wanted to see happen, but it just looked like there was no room for Pierre Gasly to make the overtake that he wanted to. He ended up with the rear wing in a wall, wasn't able to move, and had to DNF, and that brought out the safety car, and our only safety car of the race, actually. So he retired, and then Yuki Tsunoda did manage to get the car going again, got back into the pits, but they had to retire the car. There was too much damage, and for both of those drivers, this isn't great. And for Yuki, yeah, when you're trying to impress Red Bull, when you're trying to prove that they should have given you the shot and that they made the right decision by swapping Liam Lawson out, it's not great, and he wasn't happy with his quali anyway. I think he qualified in P8 and he was really disappointed with that. A bad weekend for Yuki Tsunoda, and not helping obviously Red Bull with the constructors at the moment with that DNF. For Alpine and Pierre Gasly, also not a great weekend. I mean, Martin Brundle was talking to Flavio Briatore on the grid before the race and thought that they would be able to get P6. They did not get points at all because Jack Doohan, I think, was the last of the runners in the race as well. So yeah, not a great weekend for Yuki Tsunoda or for Alpine in general. But who were my winners and my losers for this race? And for my winners, top of the list have to be Williams. I'm so glad they made that bounce back after Bahrain. Double points for them, amazing teamwork. I think they did really, really well. My second winner obviously has to be Oscar Piastri, because forget about winning the race, to now be leading the Drivers' Championship in your 3rd season is something that definitely puts him in that winner category for me. I'm so happy for him. And the other winner for me is Max Verstappen. And it's kind of like Williams. He had that bounce back after the Bahrain Grand Prix when the car just seemed in no man's land, to getting pole position, fighting for the win, and ending in P2. I think he did really, really well. I'm sure him and Red Bull are much happier with that kind of result where he's fighting for the win. Obviously, yes, there are things that they need to iron out there because there's no consistency, it seems, in that car. But I do think that they should be happy with that result. Losers, I have 2 of them, and the first one is Lando Norris. I just think that quali, for him, he was disappointed in it. I think a lot of people were disappointed for him because he was in with that chance of fighting for pole position. He did have a good race, don't get me wrong. He drove a really good race. But I think realistically, McLaren were probably hoping for another double podium. Even though it is difficult to overtake in Saudi, it's not impossible. And McLaren have the fastest car, let's be honest, right? Like, that's not a secret. They have the fastest car. So I think they'll probably be a little bit disappointed with that. To lose P1 in the Drivers' Championship, it's still early days, but it's not going to be what he wanted and what his team would have wanted either, his side of the garage. So he is on the losers list for this weekend. And also Alpine, like I said, no points. The DNF from Pierre Gasly, Jack Doohan. It feels like we're on an up and down roller coaster with
It feels like we're on a bit of a roller coaster when it comes to Jack Doohan. There are points where I think, right, he's really shown why he should be in Formula One. Qualifying is okay, practices seem to go well. But then we get to another weekend and it feels like we go downhill a little bit. And I think that was one of those races for him. Jeddah was one of those races. I'm really curious just where Alpine go with Jack Doohan now and what the conversations are with him because of all the rumours that we've had. But we will wait and see with him. But yeah, Alpine in general on my losers list because it was not great for them. But like I said, this triple header is over. We get a week's break. I think it's a week. I don't think we have a 2-week break. But then we head out to Miami, which generally has more overtaking. Will be quite interesting to see how the cars handled that environment and if some of the teams come with some upgrades. So I will be back with the Miami Grand Prix review in 2 weeks' time. And I know this is a slightly shorter episode than usual, guys, but I've got a family lunch I have to go to. It's a bank holiday Monday, so my apologies for that. But Saudi just didn't feel like the most exciting race to me. I knew it wasn't going to be the best. I know some people absolutely loved it, but yeah, we didn't get to see some of the overtakes and just in general, not one of my favourite tracks that we go to. We don't get as much on-track action as I would like. And when it's a one-stopper as well, we don't always get the changes in the grid that I would love to see. But it is over with now, done for another year. I will see you guys in 2 weeks' time. Thank you guys so much for listening and DLConfirm. Make sure you find me on Instagram and TikTok at stewards_office. And I will see you guys the next time you're summoned to the Stewards office.